segment of the first day of the Transformation Triumphs retreat, and we get to hear it from our very own, very inspiring, a little bit of jealousy in some of us, because she is in Hawaii. She is coming to us live from Hawaii. So let me get my notes and read a little bit about this amazing woman, Dr. Sabrina Franconeri. Is that right?
Franconeri. Very good.
Good
Very
name.
good.
I was like, how is it that you exactly pronounce her name? Here, I'm
Franconeri, just like it's written. Dr. Sabrina's fine.
Well, thank you. She is an international best-selling author and an experienced global department head with a demonstrated history of working in the legal and management consultant industries. She is a skilled career coach, career development, instructional design, public speaking, curriculum development, et cetera, et cetera. She has so many amazing talents. But Dr. Sabrina is a strong community and social services person. She's a professional in her field. She earned her doctorate of science focused on information systems and communication from Robert Morris University. And she is just an all-around incredible, sweet, kind, loving, supportive woman. So please welcome Dr. Sabrina.
Oh, thanks so much, Jamie, for that build up. I have to say thank you to you and Cheryl for putting all of this together. And thank you for all of our amazing speakers who joined us. I'll say this afternoon, just to continue to make people jealous, it's only 2 p.m. here on the beautiful Big Island. I'm coming to you from Kona. As you can see, there's a bit of the ocean behind me, so pardon the noise, but I wanted to make sure that I delivered a Hawaiian spirit for all of you. And I have a couple of pictures I wanted to show you being the last speaker of the evening. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the concept of kindness. My presentation is called Fly into Kindness, and the chapter that I wrote in Transformational Triumphs is called Kindness Changes Everything. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this presentation from Hawaii, and I'm so grateful to be able to do that, is simply because the spirit of aloha just resonates with me. It is truly about kindness. It is truly about ohana, your family, and just having the love and the environment that you want to thrive in. Every time I step onto this island, no matter which island of Hawaii I am on, I just have a warmth and kindness and love that's just spread over top of me. One of my colleagues and good friends, Jeff Bannon, hi Jeff, he's on this call. I saw him jump in. He talked to me the other morning and he said, I can hear the happiness in your voice just being in Hawaii. So I just want to continue rolling through my presentation with that spirit of aloha as we talk about my story. So our fabulous maestro, Cheryl Clark, is going to share out a couple of photos for us, and we'll go ahead and just dive in. I figured being the last speaker of the evening, I wanted to be a visual person, and we'll go ahead and simply do that. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and just jump to my very first photograph, if you don't mind, Cheryl. Perfect. So I'm sharing this with all of you simply because I wanted to pay homage to the island of Maui and the difficulties that that island has been facing due to the wildfires. But I really just love this photo because it focuses in on the concept of reflection. I am sharing my story with all of you because I once had a very, very different life. I had a teaching career that was filled with ups and downs. I actually cried on my first day on the job when I was a teacher many years ago. I had to testify in juvenile court over a student crime. And during the time that I was a school teacher, I conquered a rumor mill that even the dirtiest tabloids would, be shamed about. I also got to meet some wonderful people who I still love very much to this day, and I saw many students exceed their potential. Additionally, in my personal life, I had a very difficult engagement. I had a beautiful wedding. I had a lukewarm honeymoon, and I had a terrible marriage. That being said, too, my amazing circle of friends and family were alienated because of the choice that I made in a spouse. What followed was an inevitable epic divorce, a lot of lows, financial worries, and a lot of highs. I learned what I required in an intimate partner, and I learned to be more comfortable with myself as a woman. And during that time, I also found a career that fed and empowered me. But believe it or not, I had this natural armor that was created, and some of it still exists right now because I had been hardened by the reality of that experience. And I was only age 23 through 27 when I went through that. I really struggled, though, in my career because I wanted to bring my whole and authentic self to work. And you hear that phrase quite a bit now. But I also saw a lot of employers talk the talk, but not walk the walk. And I questioned myself, how can I be safe? How can I be myself in an environment that I don't necessarily trust? I've been doing a lot of writing and talking about my story over these past couple of months, and I always tend to go back to my inner child. So Cheryl, if you want to go to the next photo, I love the face on this child, and this is me. This is me when I was 3 years old. And I love that picture. I love that t-shirt. It actually says I'm a little dancer. You can't see it in there, but I think I still have it today. I was a fearless child, and I was able to really stay that way until I was in about the first grade. I've written a lot of other stories, and I was a victim of childhood bullying. It really lowered my self-esteem pretty fast, and it caused me to develop a pretty nasty case of imposter syndrome. And I know that we all make our own choices, and I can't blame other kids. I can't blame imposter syndrome on some of the paths and the choices that I've taken, but I'm continuously striving to go back to this little girl. She's carefree, she's hilarious, she has a lot of guts, and above all, she's kind. I'm a product of my environment, and I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist. I pride my abilities in learning fast, working faster, and getting to that unattainable concept of perfection. I've never gotten there, though. And as I said, I've been bullied, I've been broken down, I've been pushed to the limit by bosses and colleagues and significant others and my friends. But worst of all, I've done that to myself. And I really thought I had to be a certain person in order to be respected. And not realizing what I was doing was allowing imposter syndrome to swallow me alive. I was really afraid to reveal who was behind that curtain in that vulnerable state. And I will admit, talking to all of you, I'm nervous right now. It's a vulnerable position to put yourself in. And I completely agree with the concept that Cindy Rose was saying. It's just nerve-wracking to put yourself up here and talk about these experiences, but I'm so happy to be in this environment. But what I also didn't necessarily know at the time when I was going through all of those areas in my career, there was one transformational realization that I needed to have. And that is kind people are successful people. So think about this photo of this little girl. She's gutsy, she's calm, she's carefree, and she's kind. And I'll be smiling at you and continuously trying to make that face as we go through the presentation. You can go ahead, Cheryl, and jump to the next photo. So this is a little bit of a collage, and I'll talk about this in a second, but I've spent the bulk of my career working in law firms. Anyone who's familiar with lawyers and law firms know that this is a place and a profession that just lacks emotional intelligence. I'm an empath, though, and I have a really good heart. So I struggled a lot. And I thought that in order to be that successful person and that badass, I had to mirror the way that I was being treated, which wasn't always pleasant. I never really understood that I was just fine as myself until I started to learn valuable lessons. Now, I chose to share this particular photo with all of you because I attribute these years as my monster years. My monster years took place during my second major role in a law firm, and I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And it was just a unique place. This photo just stressed me out so much. I remember, I think it was Winter Storm Jonas is what this is a picture of. It's a pick stitch that I made many years ago. Because when I was working at this law firm, every time it would snow like this, which is a rarity for Washington, D.C., I had to wait for a message learning that the office was not closed, and I had to figure out a way to commute into work. And those of you from Canada on the line, I know this might seem a little bit different for all of you, but this was very difficult in Washington, D.C. because the equipment was lacking and there's not a lot of resources to clean up the snow. But I've also learned that apparently since I've left Washington, D.C., it never snowed like this again. So I'm taking that as a sign from the universe. During this role, though, I had a good title, I had a great salary, but this environment was cutthroat and it was full of a lot of he said and she said, almost pushing me to the point where I thought I was bugged, no matter what I said or what I did on the outside, because it came back to me on the inside. My attitude was terrible, and in time, I really turned into a monster. I've turned into a former shell of myself, and it was so terrible on my attitude that I started taking it out on other people. My anxiety would kick in often to a point of paralysis when I'd get to my metro stop each morning. My attitude was so bad that I was eventually confronted by my boss, and it was really the first time I got in trouble at work. It created an odd tension for months. I regretted being so honest. I regretted saying I hated my job and I hated the decision that I made. And I regretted saying that I was treating people the way that I had learned to be treated in this type of environment. But then I stopped and had a realization. It takes a lot of energy to be so angry and unkind all of the time. And I knew that I had to make a change. So I really had to make that decision to let my anger subside. And the more that I did that, I started to grow more positive about my employment situation. I knew I couldn't change it overnight, and I eventually got myself to a better place. And what I noticed in that space is that my attitude improved, and so did my options. It set me up to take the next professional step. And in my story, I constantly go back to the concept of how kindness changes everything. So I'm going to ask Cheryl to flip through the next couple of photos. Cheryl, at your leisure, just feel free. But I went ahead and took a global role and moved to New York. So I had a chance to do a lot of traveling and have a great environment and have a great position. And I really enjoyed the role specifically. However, that monster started coming back. And if you take a look at my face, and feel free, Cheryl, you can flip back and forth through all these photos. That's the last one in this era. But I really just, again, turned into that monster because constantly direct feedback I didn't agree with, being treated in a way that I wasn't accustomed to. So I started treating people that way, including people who worked for me. There were moments that when I would get out of bed, I felt like I had been punched in the face. So I started again going down that path until we got to the concept of 2020. So that's why I chose this photo with my mask. And I love that zebra print mask. I wish I could still find those now when I need to wear a mask. But as we all know, 2020 brought us a lot of terror and horror while ripping us away from our loved ones. And during this time, my mental and my physical health declined rapidly. All I had to look forward to each day was going to work. It was my escape. I was locked in this tiny apartment in Jersey City, and all I had was the window to the outside world was my computer and my work and the items that I was currently tasked with. My current boss at the time and I started to have a real ambivalence towards one another, and that started to add towards my misery. I also lost my right arm on the team, my go-to person, to another company. It just kept getting worse, and I just kept getting meaner. And I realized that even though everybody was going through something, it was not just about me. I knew how people were making me feel. I knew I had been way too harsh on certain people. And at this time, I said, this monster has to go away. I vowed to destroy her for good. And at that point, I really started to focus on kindness as opposed to that concept of perfection. And I started to ask myself, was it possible to be perfect? And the answer is no, but it is possible to be kind. And I remember just thinking about, as I moved on in my career, as I moved on past the pandemic, I was able to leave in a much better place because I accepted the fact that I could never be perfect, but I could be kind and I could be successful. So I have a couple of tips that I just want to share with all of you, and these are highlighted in my story around how to fly into kindness in your personal and your professional life. And you can go ahead, Cheryl, in advance. So how do we go ahead and catch this rainbow and add more kindness into our lives? So my first tip on the next slide is really around the concept of holding your composure. In my chapter in the story, I talk a lot about making mistakes and the way people treat one another when they're making mistakes. As a leader, as a woman, as a friend, as a partner, I try to make sure that I'm in the right frame of mind when I'm about to have a conversation that's difficult. If I feel like I'm not, I choose not to act immediately. I'm not focusing on the accusations. I want to be able to empower that person, whoever they are. There's no right or wrong way to communicate this stuff. So please understand that everyone's communication style is different. All of my photos as we go through these next couple of slides are from Hawaii as well. And I felt like this really screamed empowerment. That's me looking over the city of Honolulu and definitely keeping my composure. My next tip on the next slide is called standing up for you. So those of us, particularly those of us who are women, tend to not always want to speak up from time to time. So when you feel like you're being unfairly challenged in a conflict, please stand up for yourself. It incorporates more kindness because you're saying your truth, and I'll talk about that in my next tip, but also you're staying true to yourself and you're remaining in that professional area. I found that I was able to do this more easily after I turned 40. And I know Kelly talked a lot about, what happens after 40. And I think 40 is a beautiful age. But for those of us who aren't quite 40 yet, don't let age hold you back. Start doing that. Start standing up for yourself and start incorporating that act of kindness to yourself and to individuals around you. And that shows that you're being honest with them. I also encourage you on the next slide to own your truth. Be forthcoming in your communications. Those who are on this call who have worked for me know I say this all the time. I cannot read your mind. I cannot operate at that level if you don't tell me what's going on. I can't fix it if I don't know about it. So be comfortable and communicate that. It's again about self-care for your well-being, and for the others that work with you, that talk to you, that are in your personal life. Own your truth. I can't fix it if I don't know about it. Evaluate your challenge. I've been in high pressure situations all my life. As I said, I'm a product of my environment. I work in a high pressure area. I know people overreact constantly. Every time I see this happening, I ask myself, am I doing brain surgery? I've even started to say, when I've had people panic when I'm working with them or even in my personal life, is somebody hurt? Has somebody died? Putting it in perspective is, again, adding more kindness into that professional being. If someone has not been so abruptly hurt, pull the individual back in. Keeping calm, it builds credibility and it builds kindness, it builds approachability. And that, to me, I think was the biggest thing I learned about squashing that monster that I had become. And my last piece of advice has to do with boundaries. Boundaries are not bad. If we don't rest, we're being unkind to ourselves, we're being unkind to everyone we love and our places of employment. We cannot be this person we need to be all of the time without taking proper care. So your emails can wait, your text messages can wait. Think about hiding your phone every once in a while and just simply allow yourself to live in that moment and be kind. The boundary is not bad. And I'm leaving you with the concept of hanging loose here in Hawaii. So I know I have a lot to learn, but I want to ask all of you the question, are you ready to fly into kindness? I hope that you are. I hope that I was able to make a slight impact on your ability to react, your ability to stand up for yourself, and your ability to communicate. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing journey for me. I've since returned to the legal industry, And I will admit that my days are not without their fair share of challenges, and they're not without myself wanting to be unkind. But remembering, if I can just live by these 5 rules that I created for myself, it certainly allows my well-being and to be better. It certainly allows me to embody that spirit of aloha, even when I'm not able to be at my best. So I will leave you with that. And I will simply say aloha, ahoy ho. Thank you for listening. And I hope that you were able to gather some takeaways.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Is everybody else's mind like totally blown right now? Sabrina, when I read your fly into kindness, I was like, okay, this is right on track with everybody else with the, self-care and self-love and self-soothing. And even though that's exactly what you were talking about, it still feels like a whole different level of that self-care, and it's logical, it's practical, but so important. So important. Yay.
Oh, thank you so much. And I hope you all got to know me a little bit better through my photos and the vulnerability. I showed you all what I looked like when I was 3. Hopefully she'll come back. But I definitely, I just really encourage everyone to just keep that spirit of kindness with them.
I love it. I love it. It's so, so powerful. And yes, I loved learning more about you and loved learning. And I can't wait to read your chapter. I think 3 other people have said that already. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Okay. So, wow. What an incredible day. I can't believe it's already good God. Anybody have any questions for Sabrina? Any kind of feedback? Anyway, no pressure. Just
and don't be mad at me because I am going to go swimming after this.
I'd like to say something.
Hi, Jeff.
Just jump in. Hi, Sabrina, a million miles away. I just want, I'm very impressed, as always, by your preparation and your kindness in the way that you share the information with us. And I just want to point out for anybody who's not as familiar with the law firm world as I am, I work as a consultant to law firms, everyone, that finding that great kindness in the midst of the pressure in the law firm world, if you can do it there, it's like if you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. If you can find kindness in that environment, which is so incredibly competitive and all kinds of challenges to not be kind, that's to me even more impressive than hearing it from someone who worked in some other field, even though I realize everyone has challenges. So I just want to say that. And I was going to just ask you, when you run up against the least kind people, let's say in your current job. No, I haven't run into many at that where you work now in my own experiences there, but when you do run into the most unkind person or unkind people, do you find that your kindness escalates as a result? What's the trade-off between their being they're just having a horrible day and they're being super mean-spirited?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I definitely think, Jeff, it really depends on the individual for certain, but I know how I felt when I was being treated like that. And for those of you that don't know, Jeff and I have worked together since I was about 27 years old. So we know each other really, really well. And he knows some of the experiences I went through. And I just simply don't ever want to return that, because I saw myself doing it. And I remember I would hear myself when I was in that monster phase of my life. And it just simply, it's not me, but it also isn't healthy for the person. And it's not healthy for you as that individual.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Sabrina? Because that was a great question. Thank you for being bold and brave, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. Setting boundaries. Honestly, that is boundaries with ourselves even can be a struggle, or at least maybe I'm the only one, but boundaries with myself are really important and such a powerful thing to be able to set your own boundaries. And then I feel like when you learn to do that with yourself, you're a little bit better about setting boundaries with others and honoring their boundaries. You know, something that has come to the forefront this year specifically has been people not just disregarding other people's boundaries, but that whole concept of perception and expectation. Can you talk a little bit about that, Sabrina?
Sure. I mean, it was actually interesting because I was talking with a coaching client very early this morning here about that same concept. And my view on it is I think what has happened, and there's so many things about COVID that changed all of us. There's some things I think we want to keep, but there's some things that affected us. And one of those areas, I think, was boundaries. We don't necessarily know how to share space, whether it's physical space, emotional space, downtime space. And I think if we, particularly if we're in a leadership role, heading up a family, practicing what we preach is really key. So I always try to be a role model, particularly at work for my team, around when you're on vacation, be on vacation. Your emails can wait. If something is really wrong, I'll call you on the phone. Do not spend the entire vacation glued to your iPhone, because what you're doing is you're missing it there. And that's a boundary right there that you're violating. You're missing your trip and your 5 days, 7 days off because you're choosing just to worry about the emails coming in. And I missed many things in my life. I remember being in New Orleans with my family many years ago at Christmas. And it was during that monster phase of my life. And I was waiting on something. And my father even said to me, "Are you still looking at your," I'll censor that, "phone?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, be present, be here." So knowing that I missed a lot of those moments too, because my family won't be around forever.
Exactly. I love that. Yes. Thank you.
Of course,
Thank
my
you.
pleasure.
Thank you to all of you. We will wrap up day 1 and let Sabrina get back to her vacation. Speaking of boundaries of honoring your vacation.
Joe can have some wine and I'll have some more strawberry marshmallows.
Beautiful. Love it. So we will meet back here at 9 my time, 12 Eastern time. Tomorrow morning, same Zoom, and hopefully we'll get everybody who struggled to get in today back on track so that they can get in tomorrow. And I'll have those recordings up as soon as humanly possible. and they're going on YouTube, just so you know. But I'll send those links later. Have a great night.